All right, so we know a little bit about big O notation now, and now we're going to very briefly look at arrays, because when we get to sort algorithms, we're going to be sorting arrays, so we need to at least review arrays. Now, this is not a beginner programming course, so I'm going to assume that you know what an array is, and you've probably worked with an array. But to make sure we're all on the same page, let's just quickly create an array and remind ourselves of how we can access elements in an array. So I'm in the IDE here. This is just a test project. I'm going to create a new project, and I'm going to go through doing that with you. I'll do that the first couple of times, and then I'll assume you know how to create a project, and I'll create projects off screen before we get going in a video. But for now, we'll go to File, New, Project. You want to make sure Java is selected on the left-hand side. And here you can set the project SDK. Now, right now I have mine set to Java 9, 1.9. As I'm recording this video, Java 9 is still in early access. So I'm actually going to change mine to Java 8. But if you want to use Java 9, that's fine. For this course, it doesn't really matter. I would recommend at least Java 8 because later in the course, we will be writing some code that uses language features that were only made available in Java 8. So make sure you're using Java 8 or Java 9. I'm going to switch mine to Java 8. I'll take the latest version, 102. You don't need to check anything on the right-hand side. We're going to click Next. I'm going to check the Create Project from Template because this will have the IDE generate a main method for us. Then click Next. I'm going to call my project Arrays. And I was fooling around with this before, so the package is already set. My package is set to academy.learnprogramming.arrays. You can set yours to whatever you want, and then click Finish. Now, because I have a project open, the IDE is asking me if I want to replace the project in this window or open a second window. We don't need this test project, so I'm going to replace it. And there we go. We have our new project. I'm going to pull this back a little bit to give us some space. So let's create an int array just to get ourselves going. So we'll say int array equals new int, and I'm going to make one of size 7. Now, if we look at this, so we're creating an integer array. So these two square brackets are telling the compiler we want an array. And then when you create an array, you have to specify the size that you want. Arrays are not a dynamic data structure. We'll see some dynamic data structures later. By not being dynamic, I mean that once you've created an array instance, you cannot change its size. So this array will have enough room to hold 7 integers, and that's all it's ever going to be able to hold. We can't increase its size and we can't decrease its size. And as you'll see later, this leads to some disadvantages for arrays when we compare them with other data structures. So we have enough room in this array for 7 integers. So let's add some integers. So I'm going to set int array 0 to 20. Now, just a quick reminder, the indices are 0 based. So if you have an int array that can hold 7 integers, the valid indices will be 0 to 6. 7 will get you an array index out of bounds. And we'll see in a minute why they're 0 based. If you've ever wondered why they're 0 based rather than 1 based, you're going to find out shortly. So this is saying that in the first slot, if we can imagine an array having 7 slots or 7 buckets or however you want to look at it, 7 boxes, 7 containers that can hold integers, we're saying in the first position we want to assign the integer 20. In the second position, which would be at array index 1, we're going to give that the value 35. In array index 2, we'll give that one minus 15. In 3, we'll give that one 7. The fifth position, which would be at array index 4, is going to get 55. We've only got 2 more to go, so int array 5 will get 1, and int array 6 will get minus 22, not minus 11. So we've now filled the entire array. You don't have to fill the entire array, but we have. And as you can see, the valid indices go from 0 to 6, and that's 7 positions, 7 slots, whatever you want to call them. So let's print this array out now. I'm going to use a classic for loop so we can clearly see what's happening. So I'm going to say for int I equals 0, I less than int array.length, I plus plus, and we're going to print out int array I. And let's go ahead and run. If you by any chance get this error, I've noticed sometimes I get this when I change the SDK. You need to come up to run, build actually, and say to rebuild the project. And I think now it should run. There we go. So if you ever run into that error because you've changed the SDK like I did, just come up to build and just rebuild. Okay, so we've printed out 20, 35, minus 15, 7, etc. Let's take a look at the print statement for a minute. Once again, just as a brief review, you'll see that we're starting I at the first index in the array, and we iterate around until I is equal to the length. Now remember, the length of the array is the number of integers it can hold, and we specified that to be 7. But the valid index, the highest valid index is 6. And so we want to loop around and have I go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When it hits 7, so when it equals the length of the array, we want to drop out of the loop because 7 is actually an invalid index. So that's why when we loop around, iterate over an array, we start I at 0, and we always want to stop when whatever variable we're using to do the looping, we want to keep going while it's less than the length. When it's equal to the length, then we stop, because at that point we know we've iterated over the array, and of course we're adding 1 to the variable each time we loop. Okay, so that was a very quick review of arrays. As I said, you've probably worked with them before. In the next video, we're going to start considering the array as a data structure. And so I'll see you in the next video.